Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Garry Walmsley. I'm a real estate agent in Orlando, Florida, but really specialize in investment grade assets. So whether that be for investment, lifestyle, resort and vacation specifically. It's been 23 years now since I touched down on the shores. I've been to Florida many, many times, but I've been here for 23 years, and ultimately this is what I enjoy doing. Every day is very different than each other. I love solving problems, and at the same time, I get to work with lovely people. But we specialize, as I say, more in terms of the investment grade properties as opposed to primary residential real estate. In addition to that, my business has been set up that we actually specialize in foreign nationals. So we do specialize working with Canadians, and we've surrounded ourselves with some amazing people and associates that actually understand what happens both sides of the border. Whenever you're making investment, I mean, I was always told to, when we were looking at certainly the resort and vacation market to start with, is invest where people vacation. Well, obviously, there's nowhere better to do that than Orlando. It's the #1 vacation destination in the world, with 74 million people visiting here last year. And that's just a little shy of 2019, so pre-pandemic. But this year certainly looks a little bit more on the increase. And the same thing goes for any type of investment. Orlando has such a strong population growth. It's such a strong magnet for a lot of people. And that's not something that's just happened overnight. So that's been very consistent, whether that's down to the fact that we've got great job opportunities, vibrant lifestyle, desirable climate. There's a lot of different reasons for that population growth, combined with that thriving tourism industry. In addition to that, there's a diverse economy. A number of factors as well within the last 2 to 3 years obviously have really propelled Florida to the forefront. Now, whether that be the real estate market, taxation is a key one. Obviously, everybody loves the fact that Florida is a non-income tax state, and obviously Orlando follows suit with that. But also, there's a huge amount of people that are now retiring. So from that perspective, we have that affordable real estate, like we've mentioned. That allows a lot of people to get into this market from other markets, whereby, if we take, for example, the GTA for it specifically, there's very few people that can enter the real estate market in Toronto for under $500,000. Well, we can do that here. Education, universities, there's over 500,000 students now living within a 1-hour drive of Orlando. So again, that's another market that people look at. Huge infrastructure, $10 billion that are invested in infrastructure and construction within the next few years. So I think that, Orlando, as opposed to when we kind of go back to if we call it the Great Depression of 2008, we were in a very, very different market at that point. It was very tourism driven. Now, 15 years later, the city really has changed. It's becoming a very vibrant economic financial hub of the South. And as a result for that, there is a lot of opportunities that are here. And the thing that really is driving that, certainly from an investment perspective, is population growth and visitor numbers. Canadian interest in Florida, specifically in the US. I mean, for the last 17 years, when we've really been documenting foreign national investment into the United States, then Canada has led that investment in terms of numbers of dollars for 10 of the last 17 years, and have never fallen outside of the top 3. Look at last year, $6.6 billion came north of the border to south of the border, and that equated to 467,000 properties. So, that's a huge number since 2007. So I would say that, certainly specifically in Florida, which captivates about 55% of that number invested. I mean, that's the percentage of Canadians that, if we look at it from a state perspective, 55% of people actually invested property in Florida. The next state on that list is Arizona at 14%. So there's a huge differential there. And then we kind of drop down to 4% across the board, with like California, Texas, Nevada. Orlando and Florida specifically has always been a magnet for snowbirds. And as a result for that, we've seen a huge amount of people move down for those sort of 3 to 4 winter months. Part of the reason why I moved from the UK from that perspective is obviously a better climate, better lifestyle, better way of life. And that certainly generated a huge amount of interest if we kind of go back to the earlier years. The last few, it's changed a little bit. We're certainly seeing a lot more investment now, north of the border. And that's being driven by different demographics and different generations now. One of the trends that I'm seeing, and certainly of the last 18 months, is that we're certainly seeing a lot of millennials now, Gen Xers now, purchasing a second home first, which, when I think of a second home, I think of it that you're coming down to utilize it from that perspective. Little bit like the snowbirds from that point, not necessarily looking for anything back on an operational cost. But now we're actually seeing it that they can't afford to purchase within their home market. So they're actually now buying a second home first. And that may be utilized for various uses. More often than not, it's a straight investment asset. But at the same time, with Orlando specifically, as opposed to any other location, in and around Florida, which obviously has some fantastic locations. But when you have 74 million people coming in to visit Disney and the other theme parks in our backyard, then that gives you a tremendous potential to also offset operational costs with some rental income. Since 2008, when we heard the first time that we heard Airbnb, then that's become a very, very popular word in the vacation industry. And now all of a sudden people, look at that as a way to generate a residual income outside of their current job or full-time job. And obviously Orlando excels in that for many, many different reasons. Without a doubt, you can make it profitable. Short-term rental business, it's not a quick flip. All right, I get a bunch of calls nowadays from people, and the first question out is, I want to buy an Airbnb property. And they have no idea what that entails, what it means, the process that's involved. It just sounds really popular at this point in time. But you really do have to educate yourselves, work with people that actually operate in that business as a niche market. Representing someone in a primary residence sale is not the same as representing someone that's looking for a short-term rental property or an investment grade asset, which is obviously what we do. We specialize in that. We're very analytically driven. We have a lot of historical data, which obviously is important when you're looking at this type of property. And the key thing is education, location, representation. We are in a location that's extremely well serviced by air travel, certainly from Canada. And, a lot of people vacation here. So I think that one of the things that we've always seen is that a lot of people come into this market never even thinking about, the possibility of owning something that they're staying in. Very few people, when I first started in this business, actually knew that maybe homes that they were staying in were actually privately owned. They thought that they were all professionally managed from large entities. And that's just not the case. So it is a very straightforward process. I think one of the things that probably sets us aside as well, and we've really seen that in the last few years through COVID, where short-term rental properties and Airbnb has just exploded across the map in the United States and worldwide. But this market has been set up for that. It's very tourism friendly. The key thing that separates Orlando from many other markets is regulation. I have a lot of people that do say to me, well, why do I want to buy in Orlando? There's thousands of properties. Well, that's one of the reasons why you want to buy here. It's very heavily regulated from that point, and those regulations are set in place. And we're starting to see now a lot of places that people have purchased, whereby they're now getting into issues because ultimately they were never set up for that. Local counties and taxation authorities now are starting to wonder where are those dollars going. They want a little piece of the pie. Local residents aren't really wanting those transient people, that transient market hit into their homes and their local area. So one of the things that Orlando does extremely well is that it's set up for that. The key thing is really to send an inquiry. If you're interested in it, let's at least start a conversation. My first question to people is, what is or why are you thinking of doing this? Everybody starts the question, they always start with a thought from that perspective. And I like to think of people that they're sitting on a bit of a rope. On this end, we have lifestyle. You're doing it purely to enhance your lifestyle. And on this side, you actually have investment. So that's really just purely to increase your wealth. But the vast majority of people don't sit on the end of this rope. They sit somewhere in the middle. and it's very difficult. Everybody's different. This is a personal market. Real estate is personal, and we have to understand what are the motivating factors as to why are you doing it. What do you want to get out of it? How do you want to utilize it? Let's also look at an exit strategy. Why don't we do that to start with? There's very few people think about actually what's going to happen 5, 7 years down the line. Well, really, that should be a motivating factor, and that certainly should be a question that you ask from the very start, because that ultimately can dictate how you want to use your property, the type of zoning that we need to have, because you can't just buy anywhere in Orlando if you want to rent the property. And that's where our expertise in this niche market really comes into play. And we just want to have open and transparent conversation with people that we're working with. We've been working very closely with Canadians, the huge amount of properties and real estate that Canadians have purchased. So $163.6 billion worth of real estate. So anybody that's looking at this and thinking that they're the only Canadian and they're the first Canadian that's going to buy south of the border, this isn't anything new. All right, this is something that's been going on a long time. If we look at what people are buying, it varies a little bit, between the whole of the US and Florida. But if we look at the sort of the product type, so single family home without a doubt is the most popular product. 71% of purchases the Canadians purchase in the US are single family homes. And that makes perfect sense. And we understand that for the appreciative value. It actually segregates a little bit when we move to Florida. Only 47% of people purchase a single family home, and 40% actually purchase a condominium. And part of that may be down to the snowbird usage. If we're looking at it across the state from that perspective, it might also be to the entry level. Interestingly enough, 79% of Canadians purchase a property with cash, which is astounding. One of the biggest questions I get from Canadians is, can I obtain a property in the United States with a mortgage? And the answer is absolutely yes. And there's a number of options that you can do that. Whether you do that through a US financing company, or you do it actually through, a Canadian bank, the likes of RBC, someone like that, who actually offers a great cross-border, not only funding system, but at the same time they do a fantastic resource and a full cross-border banking program. So a lot of different assets and resources that you can take into consideration there. And then we also have data on what is the operational use of a Canadian. And if we look at it across the sort of the top 5 countries that are there, this breaks down all in different categories from that perspective, and different operational uses depending on where people are from. Without doubt, Canadians utilize their property more so than any other country as a vacation rental property. And some of that may be just a personal use as a second home, but also they really do tap in and they understand that North American market. And maybe that's because obviously we're connected in a number of different ways as opposed to other countries. There's a lot of South American and Latin American countries that purchase here purely for a primary residence. They want to move here, but that's really not the case so much in terms of Canadians. Over 60% of people, Canadians that are purchasing in Florida, actually wanted to utilize it for some type of rental use, meaning the fact that they are generating an income back from that property, whether that be small or larger. But at the same time, I think that that's something as well that any Canadian that's looking to purchase, just know that this has been done many, many times before. There's a great network. It's a very simple process. It's a little different than what it is in Canada, certainly in terms of timelines and if you are looking to fund. But there's some unique advantages as well as a Canadian when you're purchasing here, especially if you're purchasing through a Canadian bank like RBC. It's a very straightforward process. The first thing I would say is, if you're looking to do anything, start to educate yourself. But the key word there is start. I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of opportunities right now. We have a huge amount of interest, certainly from north of the border, and we can see that by that traffic flow of money that's happening from there. And whether it be for investment, whether it be for for lifestyle, there's a reason to consider that. I mean, the first question I would say that most Canadians ask me, and I don't know why this is. I don't know if it's a misrepresentation online. I don't know who's been spreading the rumors. But one of the big questions, and typically the one right at the top, outside of the one I talked about, can I obtain this with a mortgage, is that Canadians get a bad deal and a bad rap in terms of taxation, and that's just not the case. Florida is a very tax-friendly state. We welcome foreign national purchases. The only break that actually I get or a domestic citizen gets here is on their primary residence. Any investment property, that's not the case. So that's one rumor and myth I'd like to dispel from that point, because that really is one of those ones that comes up on a regular. You can almost guarantee that it's going to be in the top three questions that any Canadian asks me. And, look, at the end of the day, this isn't for everybody. All right. One of the things I think certainly I pride myself and my team's efforts on is that we know when to tell people that this isn't for you. And we've done that a huge amount of times, probably actually more so than the people that have purchased. We really aren't here. We pride ourselves in the fact that we're not just here to sell houses. No one's ever actually asked me, am I a realtor? For that point, I am. I'm a licensed realtor. But at the same time, I consider myself more of an advisor. I'm a resource. Utilize that. Utilize our experience. Ask as many questions as you want. I mean, I think the highest number of questions I've ever had is 117, and they actually came all on the same email. I don't necessarily want to answer 117 questions again, but what I can say to people is the fact that I think we've probably been through everything that you're experiencing. One of my great friends who actually does work for RBC used to say to me all the time, Garry, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that couldn't be truer in real estate. It couldn't be truer in somewhere where you're looking to purchase real estate. I would be the same if I was looking to purchase in Canada or in a different country around the world. I would have a ton of questions and ask away. I think that the one thing I would say to everybody is that if I don't know the answer, I have a group and a network and associates that I can go to that we can research that question. So let us know. We've been through a lot. We've represented, thousands of Canadians that have purchased south of the border. This isn't strange for us. This is something that we do every day. And I also have to remind myself that this is something that I do every day. And a lot of the things I do, I take for granted because the person sitting through the camera on the other end or the person I'm in the car with, this is the first time that they're doing it. So it's of prime importance that you tell me what it is that you're thinking. Just be open and honest, because that at the end of the day will get the best result for you. It'll be the best use of my time and resources for you. And ultimately, we'll make sure that we give you the correct information, whether you do or you don't purchase.